Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Third Wheel Podcast. This is Caleb reaching out to you guys today. I hope you had a good Easter weekend. And here is my co-host,
Shaps.
Oh, thanks for interrupting me. That's rude.
Good.
And then we also got a very special guest today. This is Erica. Say hi, Erica.
Hello.
So today we are going to have a very serious discussion. We've never gone this route before on anything we've done ever. But we're going to talk. Erica is a licensed professional therapist. She has worked with what different age groups, Erica?
The youngest probably being like 6 all the way up. And now I work with, I think my oldest client's probably in their 60s now. And marriage therapy too, something newer that I'm working on.
No way, marriage therapy.
Yeah.
Dang, I got all sorts of questions.
It's been fun.
And we only got her for an hour, guys. I'm so sorry. But maybe she'll come back and we can talk more about that type of stuff.
Yes.
But before we get to that, I hope everyone had a good Easter Sunday. Mine was phenomenal. How did yours go?
Oh my gosh, it was okay until, well, not until, and then it got better, is what I'm trying to say. It was going good, and then it got great because I have, okay, you know what, I'll go into it in a second. It was fine, I'll keep it at that, but essentially, I was very entertained for almost all of Easter, and then some.
And why is that?
Because a roommate of mine, one of my roommates, shared one of the greatest things I've ever seen before. I don't know if who goes to church or who doesn't, but a lot of churches will tend to put on like these Easter-like plays, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen one.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of churches do, and most of them are just to be cute. Some of them are, most of them for just for the kids, and then they have like, a tagged on message at the end, whatever, right? Well, there's a church, I'm not going to name the name, that's in Canada. It's a Canadian church.
Oh, so this isn't one you go to.
This is not one I've gone to or go to. And they put on like a full-on Broadway-style show almost every Easter. But the catch is, it's always tied to a movie. And there are two elements that always remain the same. Number one, it's always a musical, no matter what the movie. And number two, there's always a crucifixion at the end.
Okay, so that sounds horrible, but will you mind just expanding on that just a little bit?
Oh, I'd love to, because I thought like when most of you probably thought, oh my gosh, that's terrible, like how awful. But then you actually watch it and you're like, wow, they actually, I don't want to say convicted about their project. They're just so passionate about it, okay? So, like, I'll go down the list, for instance. They've done one every single year for probably the last 12 years.
12 years.
They're all on YouTube. And the YouTube playlist is called The Church Play Cinematic Universe. Church of... Yes. Okay.
The first one
they did was in 2008. And it was Star Trek.
Uh-huh.
Then they did Pirates of the Caribbean.
Wait, so who got crucified in the Star Trek one?
Captain Kirk, of course.
Okay, of course, he says. Like, I'm supposed to know that. Sorry.
And, let me tell you, I'll go, like, through the years. Okay, so the first one was, like, actually, they're incredibly great at set design and costume design.
Okay.
But, it started out very simple, like, 2 cameras, like, kind of cheap lighting, and the audio wasn't great.
But the message
and then
was
they
the
all
same.
had handheld microphones. And then, as you go on, like, past Pirates of the Caribbean, for instance... Jack Sparrow gets
oh no,
he gets strung up.
Are you serious?
Yes, and that is the crucifixion scene. Every single one of them has a crucifixion scene, and they come back, of course. There's Robin of the Hood, 2010. Let's skip ahead. They did Batman.
Wait, they do? No, stop.
They did The Dark Knight, where he's strung up on the bat signal.
Oh my gosh.
They did Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker is crucified via carbonite chamber.
That's not even canon. That's not even in the movie.
2016, they did Raid of the Lost Ark, where they had rapping Nazis.
Okay, how did they tie this into Jesus? Where
because of crucifixion.
Are you telling me Luke Skywalker died for their sins? Like, how does this work?
Back to the Future, Marty McFly gets strung up on the clock tower. I'm not joking, by the way. And these are all like an hour long. And there's so much. Fun.
At least they're respectful of people's time. That's
They did Lion King, Toy Story. Oh my God.
Who died on Lion King?
Who died on Lion King? Simba. He's already an allegory for Jesus, almost.
He is.
Oh, probably. You can make that argument. I'm sure. Sweet.
All right, go ahead.
There's the Avengers. Where Iron Man, I think, okay.
Please tell me they strung Hulk up on the New York City somewhere.
You're so close. What year did Infinity War come out?
2018.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this came out. I wonder if this came out first. Iron Man gets strung up and gets crucified on some girders.
It's not close to Hulk at all.
But I'm like,
You lied.
No. What are you talking about?
You tricked me. I thought it
He's
was
just
gonna
one
be cool.
Avenger to the left. And the last one they did was The Lion King, and then this year they did Beauty and the Beast. Dude, and every
Did Beast
single
get
year.
strung up on this one?
I imagine so.
I'm detecting a theme here.
But I'm just saying, like, it's kind of cool because at the first you're like, man, this is kind of blasphemous, borderline kind of wrong, right?
I'm actually real close to being an agnostic here. On this.
But then, like, you see the production just shoots through the roof. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, they've got lav mics now. They've got, like, 5 different cameras. They're pyrotechnics. Like, it's a big production.
That's
And I'm a
wonderful.
fan.
I don't know. I'd have to see this. That sounds awful. It sounds like it gets worse every year. What do you think, Erica? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That
Is that
sounds
something you'd watch?
intense. Would I watch any of that? I think I'll stick to the classic Jesus crucifixion.
I don't know. It sounds like
Y'all are
sounds like
kind of messing out.
it sounds like Batman's Jesus now.
I'm converted. I'm sold.
Oh, my
man.
gosh. So, yeah, that was my Easter, Caleb.
How was your Easter, Erica?
It was good. Spent it with the family. This year, I got confetti eggs. Didn't
Oh.
tell anyone, and we haven't had confetti eggs in probably close to 20 years because some siblings and relatives like to get aggressive. So I took a chance, risked it, and we all got along great. It was a lot of fun. Nobody beat anyone up with the eggs.
Are you never worried about them not cracking when you throw them at people?
No, not really. They did hurt though. They
Yeah.
did sting whenever they would
bet.
make contact. that's
Especially when
for
the
sure.
guys start throwing them because like they just just go all the way.
Oh, yeah.
That absolutely was the thing. So the
Yeah.
guys did it, but I was shocked. I got this massive bag of confetti eggs for like $20.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I was shocked. I showed my mom, and she was like, "This might end badly."
Is cleanup okay on those?
They're all the confetti still outside. Yeah, my dad said
Nice.
he'll use his little blower and get them.
I'm kind of curious. We don't usually go this route on the show just because, it's not necessarily just a religious-based podcast, but do you have any, like, interesting church stories? Like, I mean, I don't think anything will top Iron Man getting crucified for the sins of the masses,
No, it
but
won't.
do you have anything like that that's just, like, just as dorky or weird? Anything like that going on?
No, I think my Easters have been pretty normal. There was, I don't think we've had any crazy plays or anything too abnormal.
What about but anything before the church we go to now? Because we go to the same church. Full disclaimer.
Yes. No, I think all of our services have been pretty chill.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you get the debate of like, should your kids believe in the Easter Bunny? Because that's not,
Is that a debate now still?
yeah.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I guess growing up it was for me. Like,
Okay.
kind of like Halloween, right? Like celebrating Halloween.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. See, my parents, when I was a kid, any church you go to never called it Halloween. Was
Right.
it similar to yours? It was always called like Hallelujah Harvest or something weird.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Trunk or treats.
There you go. Yeah.
All that's what it's called now. And
I've
that's,
heard trunk or treat.
and that's
but-
actually not a bad one, but it was always called something like that. Hallelujah Harvest. Or
That sounds more wrong than Halloween.
I know. What are we harvesting here?
Harvest souls, apparently.
I don't know. I never was brought up to believe in the Easter Bunny or anything like that. I never had that thing. My parents decided to tell me right out the gate, no Easter Bunny,
No.
no Santa, no Easter Bunny, no Great Pumpkin. Nothing crazy.
Man, I wish I could have that story. I believed in the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus probably until I was 12.
I don't believe you.
No, it's true.
I legit don't believe you.
No, it's
okay,
true.
so how did they keep that up until you were a preteen?
They didn't have to try. I was the one who. I was the one who
You wanted to
pushed for it.
believe so bad.
I got into fights at school because of it, and they were like. And then my mom's like, "Hey, you know how you
I'm
asked like
sorry.
a couple of weeks ago if Santa's real? Well, me and your father just wanted to tell you that you know what, Jesus is still real, but everything else is a myth.
It took a major conflict at school.
Not like
So-
a fist fight, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but it took a major conflict at school for
No,
your parents to
yeah.
finally talk about, hey, we should probably tell our son that
It
none of
was
this is
something
real.
like, well, after like I got into like the 5th argument about it, I asked them again just to be sure I'm backing the right horse in this.
Yeah.
Because I got the money from the Tooth Fairy, okay? Evidence, physical evidence. I
You
got the
presents.
toys.
You got the presents from Santa.
Absolutely, man. Like Easter Bunny, always a basket. Okay, there's physical evidence. That's how they get you. They put physical evidence, and then they teach the kids. You know what? If you see it, then believe it. How messed up is that?
That's very messed up.
Honestly. Look at me.
We dig into that childhood trauma.
I'm about
there,
to say that was my
surrounded.
next question.
I have to cope by watching other churches do their Easter services and imagining that Iron Man is somehow Jesus. Yes, I'm messed up.
Well, now I got to ask Erica. So, how do you think that affects a child's mental development? You know, just give your opinion. I'll pay extra if we're
Just
going to
look at
pay for
me.
this like a session. I don't mind, but I'm just curious. Get your honest opinion on it.
Like when kids grow up believing in the Easter Bunny.
Yeah,
and all those.
is there a professional cutoff point? Does it mess with them if they believe it when till they're 12?
I think it's innocent. I think because it's so normalized that it doesn't really cause too much childhood trauma. But I know when my sister was 12, she still believed in the Easter Bunny, and then they had to break the news to her, and she was very distraught. So maybe like some little trauma, nothing, no big T trauma.
I
there.
felt like someone shot my puppy.
Well, I guess I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah, not everyone is as sheltered as you, buddy.
No.
Yeah, there's that too. Life, environmental factors as well that play into it. I mean, I personally, outside of a professional opinion, don't see anything wrong with having kids raised with like the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, this and that. And then when they come to believe that it's not true, like I think it just comes with time. I don't think it's like this massive, well, maybe in your case a little different, this massive like rip the Band-Aid off moment of like everything's a lie. So
I mean, you heard it here, Shaps, from a professional opinion.
Gotcha. I'm
You're
a
the
minority.
outlier.
I see.
Yeah, so you're the exception to the rule here.
That's
maybe
okay.
I should do a study on it. I don't know.
I was about to say it was healthy until we heard your story.
I was like, right, guys? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone else?
I think it's a good segue. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Let's do this. Okay. So,
Disclaimer? Is there a disclaimer?
no.
Oh, okay.
Sir, do you mind if I finish next time? No. Okay. So, we've talked before about anxiety. Talked about our deepest fears, and that got me thinking about anxiety because you brought it up. But also, like for me, I mean, I think everybody gets anxious to some degree, unless Erica disagrees. Everyone gets anxious, but depression, like I don't know that. Are the numbers high for depression amongst young adults nowadays, Erica? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have the statistics like right off my head, top of my head. But since COVID, so in the last 3 years, we have seen a massive increase in anxiety and depression. Obviously, stemming from so many years of isolation and not being able to, go out and socialize. And so the people who now are going out and socializing and things are quote unquote normal now. There's so much more social anxiety that's presenting. And sometimes people come in and they're like early 20s and they're like, I've never had social anxiety. But I mean, also we have to look at like the years of development too. It's like, okay, a 14, 15-year-old is now coming into early adulthood, young adult life. And those are significant, crucial years that they were missing out on, development socially, mentally, emotionally. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's also a therapist who works in a school. And she was saying that she's noticed that kids have their level of resiliency has decreased significantly since coming out of COVID because they haven't been in these overly stimulated situations to learn how to cope, and then they just run back to isolation and being alone and making only online friends because it's safer. So
Before that, what was the biggest factor that kind of fit into depression before COVID? Like, what was a normal person who struggled with depression? What fit into that?
I mean, so I'll be honest, my career didn't start in therapy until literally 2020, like before COVID happened. It was February 2020 that I officially moved into the mental health field. Just prior to COVID, I was working in a school with kids before I was fully licensed as a behavioral interventionist. And so I think a lot of times, it was lower income, so like their environmental influences and factors were so much different as far as stressors, because it's like some kids were like, I don't know if I'm going to eat tonight because, economically their parents just weren't in a spot where their needs were always being met. So seeing that was a factor into a lot of the depression and anxiety for kids I was working with prior to COVID. And then after COVID, it was a lot of the social anxiety, lack of resiliency, just the isolation. I mean, also factoring in that TikTok became a massive thing and it's just like taken over, which I hate TikTok, by the way, because everyone wants to come in like they know what they're talking about, and I'm not the professional. They're like, I've learned this on TikTok and spent hours learning about trauma bonding, and I'm like, yeah, no, you don't have a trauma bond with your ex. Sorry.
As okay, so as technology has advanced, and like say TikTok, not new, but it's pretty recent. And so with that, with more social media stuff, is that playing more and feeding more into people being depressed, people being anxious because they're so glued to phones possibly, and now I don't know, they're not as good socially, or being indoors all day, staying on their phone? Is that feeding into the depression more?
Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of times where I'll say specifically kids have this false sense of connection because they're like, oh, my online friends are my best friends and I love them and like I just want to always be around them. The virtual VR, Oculus, I have one kid who's like, oh, my virtual friends are the best ones I have and I can't wait to get home to play with them. And all day long they're dreading being in social situations and around like real people. Yeah.
That kind of sucks.
It does. But they don't see it because this specific kid I'm talking about is maybe 13. So you think of it, they were like 10 whenever the pandemic happened. That's a mass difference between 10 and 13.
So anyone who was developing over the past couple of years through COVID is probably in a way worse position now than when they would have been normally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm definitely seeing. More of isolation, social withdrawal, social anxiety, depression. I can't tell you how many kids I've seen working in the mental health hospital who do great in these smaller environments, and then the second it's time to go back to school, their regression is significant because they have no resiliency, and then they end up wanting to be homeschooled.
See, I wasn't even thinking COVID. I don't know what you were thinking, Shaps, but I wasn't even thinking COVID before we even brought this up. I was just thinking like life,
I do think it's quite prevalent. However, I believe there are also some subjects we can tackle that are more applicable to all forms of life, rather than just COVID, even though that is very significant. What comes to mind is sort of, I would say, the advancement of ingenuity. So you mentioned TikTok earlier, social media, where instead of just focusing on the bad, do you see any pros to social media? Because actually, me and Caleb have talked kind of negatively about social media plenty of times.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, is there actually any positive sides or pros to social media currently?
Yeah, actually, I say this all the time. It's like, as much as I sit here and talk about how much I hate TikTok, I am definitely thankful for it because I think Generation Z has made mental health less stigmatized because they're putting all this out there. I can't tell you how many, I don't have TikTok, but how many Instagram reels I'll flip through, and like every 2 to 3, and maybe it's just because it's obviously like tailored to like what I do and like my needs and what I'm searching, but there's just so many short videos out there about mental health that kind of normalize depression, anxiety,
And is it stressing you out the whole time you're watching them?
No, I learned a lot.
Dude,
yeah,
okay,
but I'm
so
like,
helpful.
I'm not like taking these 30-second videos and thinking I know everything, even as a professional. And I think that sometimes that line that gets blurred. But I will say, in a positive aspect of things, there's just so much knowledge out there for people to learn because mental health resources aren't always available to people. And so if they can have other resources, and they kind of have to do their research to make sure that they're fact checking it and not taking a 30-second video and like, honing in on that. Like, oh, I must be a narcissist, or my ex must be a narcissist. I hate that word.
You hate narcissists?
I don't want to say
ex?
I don't want to say that I hate the word. I hate how
The overuse of it?
Yeah, how overused it is, and it's like, oh, so and so is a narcissist. My ex or my dad or this or that.
Or if I say myself, if I say I'm a narcissist, that bugs you.
Yeah.
A word very similar to that was popular a couple years ago, sociopath.
Oh,
when
yeah.
everyone started, after the that Jake Paul documentary, a lot of people started calling everyone sociopath. So, yeah, it's weird how, like, mental health, everyone is more aware of it now, but also weird trends have come out of it. Like, in a way I don't think it ever has before.
Yeah.
Maybe it has in other ways, but it's almost like, when someone has the plague, or you just want to accuse someone of having the plague just because they coughed, or something like that. It's almost that situation where it's mass panic, where you see it broadcasted and suddenly everyone has access to the information that, hundreds of years ago only like trained professionals would have.
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone has an opinion, but also because of social media, everyone has a voice, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But it also creates a symptom of that is like this witch hunt mentality where everyone also is liable for accusation and labeling. So I think labeling is a big struggle with this generation.
Yeah.
And my generation as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's similar. It's in the same vein as like Googling your symptoms. You're like, oh, I'm about to have a heart attack, or oh man, I must be having a brain aneurysm. It's the same thing, except now, like Erica brought up, it's on TikTok. It just pops up on everybody's feed. Yep. It's 10 seconds. Someone's giving you a happy meal of a diagnosis, just real quick. Foreshadowing what we're going to eat today. This episode's sponsored by McDonald's.
More on that later.
Anyway, it's ridiculous, I think, just a little bit, and so many kids, I know a bunch of teenagers now in a healthy way, not a weird way. I know a bunch of people now that are like, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, I have all these things. They're labeling themselves. And like, I can't imagine labeling myself at 12, 15 years old with some disorder and just going around my whole life saying, yeah, I'm disabled, somewhere in this area, and just feeding into that, telling that about myself. Like, it's just.
So I have actually a question for that then. Do you think that to a certain age, ignorance is bliss and should be encouraged, not in the sense where we should not educate our children, but also so we don't open the doors to something that they could adapt to or adopt for themselves? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So when I worked in the hospital settings, it was group therapy, so up to 10 kids, all broken up by appropriate age range. But sometimes I would have parents come in, or I would assess kids and be like, hey, listen, like the criteria that your kid has is super low. I don't want to do more harm than good than putting them in a group with kids who have high acuity, self-harming, major depressive disorder, recent suicide attempts, things like that, because then that exposes them to so many other issues that they probably didn't even know were out there. So yes, I think to a certain degree there needs to be kind of a shielding for certain kids, right? But social media opens that door to have all this exposure. So a couple years ago, there was this trend on TikTok, and maybe it still is, of Tourette's and dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality disorder.
And that movies get that too. Everyone, some reason, multiple personality disorder. Maybe it's after that movie Split came out, where everyone's just like, man, I got 5 people in me, and I can switch whenever I want. I think that kind of is what fed into making that popular.
People are just so influenceable. I mean, myself included, that's just how people are, right? So, man, it's crazy how everything is just the speed of knowledge that we are able to intake has increased so much. Like before it was only like, okay, you would learn 1 or 2 new things a day, maybe in a week, and now it's like every day, every minute there's something that can be thrown your way, and you at a certain point when you've seen so much imagery and you've have intaken so much knowledge, you can't really decipher what's truth and what's not, or what's an opinion anymore, unless you do research. But the society doesn't really teach everyone to do research. It just kind of throws things in your way and then relies on you to make that choice instead of encouraging you to do research, encouraging you to actually seek that out. For instance, a lot of people don't seek professional help anymore because they self-diagnose. Professional help is so underrated nowadays. Even people like in college, for instance, like have a professor, like who encourages it or discourages it. Where do you think, what age, going back to my earlier point, what age do you think we should be introducing these ideas to them, or should it be more gradual? And if so, how gradual?
I don't think there's necessarily like an age to start presenting it, because the hospital I worked at and kids I've worked with were as young as 6 years old coming in. And a lot of times those are like mood disorders in the sense of like couldn't regulate their anger, things like that. Not so much depression unless they had like a massive amount of trauma growing up. But I think the age that I would probably put on it would probably be around 12, just because one, biologically things are changing so rapidly for kids, and that's confusing in and of itself. And then 2, I think they have just more of an understanding of what these feelings are and just developing that emotional intelligence, even from a younger age. I think implementing that from such a young age so that by the time they get to an older age, and if they do start to struggle with these things, they have an understanding. Communication skills is a huge thing that I teach across the board in marriage therapy, with adults, with kids, of being able to adequately identify the emotions that they're feeling, communicate them, learning ways to sit with them, and not always trying to distract and remove those feelings from themselves. Yeah.
So
I actually got a quick thing before you get to yours. I'm surprised actually how many people are in therapy, because the people that I think like, man, they need therapy because they're kind of crazy, or they're whatever, and then they're like, oh, I'm in therapy. I'm like, oh, like I don't know. I think you need to fire your therapist. I don't know. I don't know. What were you gonna say, Shaps?
Oh no, I mean, keep going with that. Does you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is there a good or bad therapist, Erica?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
Wow,
absolutely.
imagine
If the camera was on her, guys, she didn't even hesitate.
She's like, what are you talking about?
She gave me a look. She was like, "Oh, absolutely."
Yes, absolutely. I think you kind of also have to just like vibe with a therapist as well. There are clients that I have that I'm just like, oh, I do not care for this person as a person.
Sure.
But I have to work through those feelings as a therapist to understand why they are the way that they are.
How do you navigate that? That sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of sympathy and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's his name is Carl Rogers. He's dead now, but he was
So we're covered legally.
he's a therapist, and so he came up with these points of what makes a good therapist, and it's empathy and like unconditional positive regard, and I think there's another one. Anyways, and so really, as long as you have these three things that Carl Rogers identified as making a good therapist, then it's like, okay, then you're pretty solid. Whether you have this massive amount of skill and technique, as long as you can learn to sit with those people in those feelings and let them feel like they're seen and known and heard.
Yeah.
And let them sit in those uncomfortable feelings, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting you use the word empathy. That's kind of very curious about that. And it's something that my sister learns as well. She's going to college for psychology.
Oh, nice.
She's going to. She actually just got accepted into a master's program. Congrats.
Yeah,
Emily.
not.
Congrats. Well, first let me ask, could you define the difference between sympathy and empathy?
Yeah, so sympathy is, there's this great video that's narrated by Brene Brown, and it's one of my favorite ways that, you know, I try to explain sympathy and empathy to people. And so really sympathy is like you're looking down at a hole, and a person's down there and you kind of look down at them, you're like, oh man, that sucks. Like, I'm so sorry that's happened to you and you've fallen in this hole. And then you kind of just walk away and, you know, keep going with your life.
Yeah.
And then empathy is looking down in the hole, choosing to go down in there with them and sit in those feelings with them.
Oh man.
And
That's
like,
deep.
yeah, help them acknowledge their own feelings and you acknowledging their feelings as well. And just kind of sitting in it, not trying to fix it, not trying to help them move past it, but hey, we're just going to sit here together.
Goodness.
So it sounds actually
deep.
kind of dangerous to be a therapist, because it sounds like you're not only choosing to acknowledge their feelings, but also to not inherit them, but to live with them or live through them in a way, in almost as if you need to experience it yourself in order to understand your patient or your friend or whoever it may be. So I'm imagining that gets dangerous at a time. Like, some therapists probably lose themselves in that and others thrive in it. Have you had any bad instances where like a therapist shows too much empathy and not enough sympathy instead?
Yeah, I think back to that question you initially asked me when I had that reaction of, is there a bad therapist and a good therapist?
I was getting ready to revisit that.
Yeah. I don't want to say like a bad therapist would have too much empathy, but it's like I see 28 to 32 clients a week. Wow. 28 to 32 different people from age span of 8 to 60.
Goodness.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if I sit there and really set in that hole with them, even after they leave my office, I'm no good for the next person that comes
Right.
in.
Yeah.
And so and I tell people this all the time, is that I truly feel like I was created to do this job. Like, there's just certain things that are ingrained in me to be able to be a good therapist. And I think a part of that also is learning to empathize with the person in the moment, but then kind of letting it go once they leave my office, and then I deal with the next one.
I have asked you that before, and that was a dang good answer.
That's good.
That was great.
So it's just a balance. And actually, I was having a conversation with my cousin yesterday, and she's a social worker and a crisis intervention counselor for a school. And she said that they had taken a personality quiz in college one time, and compassion was kind of low on her list. And the teacher had asked, like, what are you studying? What are you going into? And she almost kind of was like, it's a good thing that your compassion is lower, because if you had way too much compassion and empathy for people, your emotional bucket's going to be full halfway through the day, and you're going to be mentally, emotionally drained.
That's what I've heard before, and I find that so fascinating, because some people just imagine it's all empathy or nothing, but you have to have boundaries and you have to have restraints, and you can't pour too much of yourself or else you won't be able to help everyone else.
Yeah. And so my cousin even said she's kind of curious if she wants to get a male therapist, because males just, generally tend to be more logical and less emotional.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all female therapists are like in there crying with their clients all day long. But having
mine wasn't.
yeah, having that logical viewpoint is also so helpful, because then we end up getting clouded as a therapist with their emotions, and they're already clouded enough that they need a different vantage point, a clear vantage point from someone who isn't wrapped up emotionally to that degree with them. And I tell people all the time, I tell people all the time that I struggle with empathy and empathizing with others, but then I also tell, and then they give me a funny look, 'cause they're like, "Aren't you a therapist?" I'm like, yes, I know where you're going with that. But I always tell them, like, I think that's what makes me a successful therapist, is I don't struggle with it. My own personal therapist and I have worked through this. But what I came to the conclusion was that I actively choose how much I empathize with others.
Okay.
And then, with my clients, and that kind of helps protect me and create a safeguard to not get too wrapped up emotionally into their problems.
Interesting you said that, because I have heard that a lot of people like to think that therapists just have everything figured out and they are impenetrable when it comes to mental worries or whatnot. But actually, a lot of therapists are encouraged to have therapists. Yes, which is really cool. It just it helps humanizes therapists to me, like how we're all sort of on the same boat, but just some people know how to traverse it better or know how to guide you. But at the same time, because they're helping you, someone needs to help them. Like, I just think that's really cool.
Yeah.
How long have you known your therapist currently?
I've seen her off and on for 2 years. So I went back to therapy in October of 2021 because work got so stressful. And it wasn't even the therapy. I was working for a hospital, and the amount of documentation and just like all the crossing your T's and dotting your I's was just horrific. And I was insanely stressed, working easy 10 to 12 hour days, 5 days a week. And then I went to, this was the first time I ever was like, I need to do something about this. So I went to the doctor, got on like some as needed anxiety medication. And then also, because I couldn't sleep, like my mind was always just racing about work and what I need to do. And it was just overwhelming the first like 6 months of moving full-time into my career. And then also went back to therapy as well. And I think that's just about all my sessions were about, like venting about work, and then also focusing on like what I can and can't control, and then being able to like also deal with the fear of like not being a good enough therapist, or like I'm not helping people enough, and just a lot of like these irrational thought processes that we call thought distortions, and being able to identify those and work through them. So
I have to ask you something,
Yes,
because
please.
that really registered with me. You struggle with thoughts about like I'm not helping people enough. How do you deal with those? Because I get those. A lot of people confide in me and ask me for help and ask me for, but and I love helping. I do, but sometimes I walk away thinking I wish I could have done more. And like, how do you know when it's irrational? When is it not irrational? Am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? How do you figure that out?
figuring out what healthy boundaries are for yourself personally, being able to also be okay with the feeling and the thought that like we may never find out the answer. And that's one of the, like within the first 2 to 3 sessions, the conversation I have with clients, because a lot of times they want to heal and they want to find the root and they want to, which is great. And I'm like, yes, let's dig into it. I said, I'll tell them, I said, listen, like we also have to be okay with the fact that we may never know the reason why. And like, how do we reconcile with that?
I don't think I can.
So
Let me fix my position to where I'm laying in a chair and we're just going through this session real quick.
I want to bounce back to a question you had, or not, it's just a point you brought up, Caleb.
Sure,
You were talking about how certain people have therapists even though they're acting crazy or whatever, or completely disingenuine. Now, to that, I also know that a lot of therapy has to do with the patient, or do you refer to them as patients?
Patient, client.
Client. Let's just say client.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work on the client's part because they have to be willing to help themselves in some case, right?
Yeah.
So how much work is distributed between the therapist and the client?
Yeah, I used to tell people all the time, I need you to put in 51% and I'll put in 49%. I will never work harder. And I tell them this, I will never work harder than you. I see you 1 hour a week, once a week, and it's everything else you're going to do outside of here that is going to matter and going to count. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to be supportive. I'm going to be encouraging. I'm going to help you through these hard times, but I don't want you to ever think that I'm going to work harder than you.
Wow.
Goodness. I didn't know you were so firm.
Very, yeah.
That's crazy. I
well,
like that.
there's so many people, and within the first session too, I always warn people. I keep telling myself I'm going to get away from the word warning because it sounds terrible, but I do warn them. I'm like, listen, I don't sugarcoat things. I'm very direct. I'm going to be super honest with you. I'm going to keep you accountable, because otherwise I think generally people think if they've never been to therapy is just coming in and venting for 45, 50 minutes about their week. And I'm like, that's not what therapy is. And if that's what you think therapy is, then like, just go talk to a wall, because you're not going to be paying me this much to just sit here and stare at you while you talk for 50 minutes.
So you're going to make people get the most out of their money. Well, that's great.
That takes conviction. That's good.
No, that is wonderful. You have morals, you got boundaries. That's awesome. I love that. We're not going to get to anything I actually wanted to talk about, but I am enjoying this conversation for sure. But
you didn't want to talk about any of this?
No, I do. But it's like the stuff I had in mind that I thought the conversation was going to go was like, we're not even going to get to that, which is fine. I'd love to have you back on at some point if you're ever free. I guess we got a few minutes left before we switch back to the regular tone of our regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, it's almost lunchtime.
Yeah, no, I'm starving. But my question to you, Erica, who does need therapy? Like, should everyone go to therapy? Are there warning signs to recognize? Like, how do you know when it's like, okay, what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do isn't working?
Yeah, I think, yes, to answer the question plainly, yes, I think everyone should be in therapy. Obviously, I'm a little biased. I always joke and say that when I have a child, I'm putting them in therapy as soon as they turn 12 years old, before preteen, their preteen years, before teenage years, because I see the value and benefit of it. Obviously, it's easy for me to see that. But yeah, I think everyone should go into therapy. I had a client the other day who was like, yeah, no, my life is really good. And like, everything's great. And, just like minimizing and maybe just not fully aware. And by the end of the session, that poor man was in tears crying. And he was like, maybe I do have more stuff going on. But I think just having a safe space for people to come in and talk about whatever, and process through feelings and emotions in a healthy way, and just become educated on how, to increase their emotional intelligence is a benefit. How to recognize when someone needs therapy in themselves. I think, again, it takes a lot of like self-awareness to be able to sit there and recognize like, okay, here are my warning signs. Like when I am stressed, I tend to isolate. Okay, when do I know that I'm isolating? I then, become more withdrawn and less interested in life. And just kind of being mindful, I think, is a key in that of, okay, have patterns of behavior shifted in my life? Do I feel, not like myself? Have I not been investing in the things that once brought me joy? A multitude of things. But it does take a level of self-awareness to be able to get to a point where that person can say, okay, I think I need therapy for whatever reasons.
What about now I know you just got into it, but marriage therapy, and none of us, I don't think, here are married.
I definitely wanted to hear a lot about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what are the signs that man, we need to be in marriage therapy, or should they always be in marriage therapy no matter what?
I think I probably have 10 couples, maybe a little less, on my caseload.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, it's getting better and I enjoy it more. But I would say probably 7 of the 10 on my caseload came in because they were on the brink of divorce, and one person had their foot out the door, and then that was enough for the other partner to be like, whoa, let's get some help. And then, that's just years of unraveling issues and problems. I have one couple who I think is on my caseload because they just want to kind of get ahead of it, and they're a little bit more of newlyweds in the last couple years.
That's nice.
Yeah, so majority of the clients that come in, the one partner, if not both, kind of already have one foot out the door, and it's their last ditch effort.
And out of those couples, obviously without giving too many details, out of those couples, how many of them just one person in the marriage comes in and the other spouse won't do it,
participate, or
won't show up, won't even agree to go to therapy?
That's kind of the hope that I find in these things, is that when I have both partners there and both are participating, I'm like, okay, we have some groundwork
for sure
to be able to have hope in this working and being successful. And then it also, if they're not screaming and arguing and yelling at each other in the session, that's also helpful. Because I can't tell you, there's been sessions where I've had to end them almost early because the level of disrespect towards one another was just horrific. I'm like, we're getting nowhere. Y'all are just sitting here screaming at one another.
And it's usually both sides doing it?
Yeah, if we have both sides doing it, that's...
But is it ever one side is doing it and the other guys or girls just taking it? And
yeah.
They're just sitting there.
I've had that before, and I've had to, like, intervene and, like, if you don't cut that out...
Yeah.
then you are leaving this session and we're not going to do this. And it's just the same kind of framework of challenging them and encouraging them and supporting them, giving them practical tools. And again, they got to implement them outside of the session.
Are you always working toward keeping them together, or are there times where you're like, hey, look, this is not going to work. Y'all are not,
Yeah, I've gone back and forth about that. I mean, obviously in my head, as just a normal human, I'll have my thoughts of like, man, they do not need to be together, like where they're at currently.
Yeah.
But if I see that they're putting in the work and using the tools and techniques that I'm giving them, then I'm like, okay, we can work with this.
In your opinion, can every marriage be saved? And obviously it's a big world, not everybody.
Sure.
But for the most part.
Majority.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think that's where my like pessimistic mindset comes in. I'm gonna
pessimistic
say
too. That's
probably
fine.
not. Like, and
Okay.
some of them just aren't meant to be together. Like,
Sure.
It's just like you got to do what's best for you sometimes. And listen, I'm not married. Yes, I have the tools and the education and things to back up, my professional like viewpoint. But as a personal viewpoint, I'm gonna say no.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
that's great to know.
Yeah.
But would you say there are therapists who go in with the mindset that every marriage can be saved, every marriage has a chance, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think that outlook is necessary. I mean, like I said, personally, my answer is no. Professionally, when I kind of switch, I tell everyone I have a therapist brain and a regular brain. When I switch into my therapist brain, I'm like, okay, like I have to have some hope for them sometimes. I have to be the one that has the hope for them. Because, yeah, there is hope still. Like I said, if they're willing to put the work in and both are showing up and being respectful and cordial and really putting it out there, then there's definitely hope for sure.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Please.
Were we getting your therapist mind or your people mind this entire time? If it's one of them, we owe you a lot of money.
Honestly, my therapist brain for sure. Yes.
Okay.
Crap, that was like
Caleb, you cover it this time. I'll get it next time.
I'll
it's
send
like-
the invoice.
it's like $500 an hour, bro. What do we do?
Oh, just tip. Just
There's an easy loan across the street. I can just try to grab something.
Listen, I'll talk about therapy all day long. So this one's free.
Well, I mean, Erica, I'm really glad I met you. I'm glad we're friends. We didn't meet by accident because, like, I started a small group and then she just happened to join. And I think I met you before that, though.
Yeah, we were in a different small group.
Yeah.
That foodie group where we go out to like
Yes.
local places and
I didn't mean,
cool.
I didn't
that
mean
was
to
like
scream
2
into
years
the
ago?
mic. Yeah.
yeah,
Because they only ran for like one semester and I never saw them again.
I know that was a fun group.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. And I'm glad you came to this other one and we kind of connected a bit. That's great. It's been a great discussion. What was the other thing I wanted to ask you? Let's see. Okay. Oh, I wanted to revisit the good and bad therapist thing.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a bad therapist?
Just the stories I've heard, like my cousin the other day. And again, sometimes it's just personality clashes. Maybe it doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad therapist. But my cousin the other day said she had a therapist who just taught or let her talk 75 to 80% of the time. And she didn't like that. She was like, I need someone to push back on me. I need someone to give me insight. And she's that social worker. So she has self-awareness, but she needs to take it a step further with the outside perspective. So like that wasn't a good therapist for her personally. And then she said also that therapist talked a lot about her own self in life. So I would classify that as a bad therapist. If like they're constantly like, oh yeah, like I understand my family was the same way. Like that's called self-disclosure. And I personally don't like self-disclosing at all about anything personally.
Got you. Goodness.
Yeah, I had this client the other day ask me if I had kids. And he was so nice. He's like, that's kind of weird to ask my therapist. He's like, you don't have to answer that. He was like, it's okay. And I was like, okay, thanks. What else would probably make a bad therapist? I mean, one that I think isn't challenging someone, like, and encouraging them and pushing them to be a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
I use air quotes because I don't really like that statement, a better version of yourself. Anyways.
Yeah. Almost
Thesaurus.
like we're presenting an image of ourselves rather than us.
Like authentic, authentic self. Yeah. What else would make a bad therapist? Okay, I'm going to be sometimes things do get emotional, but I had a friend who told me that their therapist cried all the time in their sessions when they would cry.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Reverse,
like,
you know that.
what? I know exactly that she would start talking. She had just, I think this is a friend who just had lost her mom. And then that therapist, knew of her mom because we all worked at the same university, and that she would cry in majority of her sessions.
But
I'm
like, what kind of do you know what kind of crying? Like,
I mean, I think the girl would start
Sympathy crying?
The
Is it-
client would
Of
start
course not.
crying,
Okay.
and then the therapist would start crying. So like, but I'm like, I don't know.
I'll be real honest. If my therapist started crying, I would be super uncomfortable.
Yeah,
They're
that's
supposed
terrible.
to be like
people
the
get
fallback,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
and like I don't know. That would mess me up. I
People
wouldn't
get
like that.
uncomfortable when I start crying, so I can't imagine the professional therapist
Like
doing it.
I hate crying in front of people, but sometimes I can't help it. Like
Right,
if something
same.
gets triggered,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, that's when I start crying. Not if I see a sad commercial or whatever.
Absolutely.
If it's literally something that triggers me, and if someone else starts crying because of that, like I don't need that. Like that would make me feel even worse because I already hate crying at this
Yeah,
moment.
absolutely.
You know.
I feel like my problems are so bad that I made my therapist cry. Like that's terrible,
I
Yeah.
didn't even think about it like that.
Oh,
Man, I'm too
geez,
much for
yeah.
my doctor.
right?
So I actually have another question on top of that.
Uh-huh.
When you're searching, say, okay, hypothetically, everyone needs a therapist, right? How should you search for a therapist? Because there's so many out there.
That's a great question.
Ugh. Honestly,
As you mentioned, some people pick a woman or a
Yeah.
man, depending on certain circumstances. What other categories? What other
I don't
criteria
know.
comes
You,
into
you heard that grunt, and I think you might have stumped her.
no. I think just knowing what you're going to therapy for.
Okay.
Is it because I want to deal with past trauma? Is it because, I lack communication skills? Am I struggling with unhealthy, coping strategies to manage my feelings and my emotions? Like, what are the reasons? And being able to understand yourself just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then being able to go, and most websites will have a bio about each therapist. And then you kind of just let that relate to whatever you're dealing with. And then honestly, it's just a lot of times, I hate to say this, but it's just kind of trial and error.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's also like, okay, on paper, maybe this therapist fits all my needs, but like when we go into session, like they are not what I need personally, in regards to their personality and things like that. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, if I'm not your cup of tea, like that's okay too. I'm not going to be offended. And I just lay it out there and tell them like my approach to therapy. And if that doesn't sit well with them, then it's like, okay, well, I can adjust still as well. Like I'm meeting the client where they're at and what their needs are. But I try to give them like my core beliefs and my core approach to therapy.
So with that, should you seek out to find someone who makes you more comfortable or someone who challenges you more?
I think it's a balance. So if I don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to share as much with you. And if I don't share as much with you, then there's only a certain level or degree of challenge that can be
see.
presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm very impressed with that. I've been to a couple of therapists, and they were good. Although I want to run the first one by you at some point in my life, maybe outside of the show. But I'm kind of curious about that. Did I have a good first therapist or not? But I do think I came out of it better. So I would, you heard it here from the expert, not me, her. She said everyone should go to therapy.
Yes, please.
If
You
you
all
haven't
need
done it
therapy.
before, give it a try. It does help. My second therapist was phenomenal. Like I got so much work done up here in the head. So absolutely. All right, awkward transition.
Oh, is that the lunch bell?
I know. Ding.
All right.
Okay, I asked everyone beforehand. We got here in front of us today in this wonderful box, a Big Mac. I got it a little while ago, so I apologize for the temperature of it.
Second microwave or once?
I didn't put it. I didn't reheat it.
Wow, so we're really getting the
Yeah.
best version. Sorry, you hate that word. Version of the Big Mac.
Okay, my question to you, Shaps: have you had a Big Mac before?
So,
Submitted by a friend of mine.
okay, so I'll be honest. Just about an hour ago, Caleb told me, because I forgot that we were actually doing this today. He was like, "Have you ever had a Big Mac before?" I'm like, "Of course I have." Then I thought about it. He was like, "Yeah, you haven't, have you? Haven't you?" I was like, "No, I don't think I have."
Yeah.
That's crazy. No, I haven't had a Big Mac before. I've had quarter pounders, but I have never had a Big Mac before.
Does anyone eat Big Macs? Anyone know? That's their number one on their menu. I'm kind of curious. Does anyone actually eat these?
Weird.
I think my question is like, what's the difference between a Big Mac and like a quarter pounder or like a double cheeseburger at McDonald's? Is it the sauce?
Well, from what I understand, a Big Mac is like stacked like this.
Okay.
And then there's a bun in the middle. And a quarter pounder is just like a single, like not a single, but like a bun and then like maybe one or two patties. But like this is like stacked up.
It's three.
It's
Okay.
bigger.
3 buns on it. And I think the sauce too, right? There's a certain sauce on it.
Yes, yeah. There's a Big Mac sauce.
I didn't know there's Big Mac sauce.
I'm looking at it now.
Looks like someone mixed ketchup and mayonnaise, honestly.
See, of course, I know the pictures are fake. Oh god, I see something I don't want on here. I'm just gonna have to take it off.
What is that?
I don't like pickles.
Onions?
I'm not a
Oh,
pickle guy.
pickles.
I love onions.
I like pickles.
Does anyone not like onions?
I love onions
Yeah,
too.
onions are great.
Honestly, and the only thing I don't like on a burger is tomatoes.
Okay, it's always gonna look more let's see. It's gonna look appetizing. I almost said
There you go.
advertising.
Advertise.
I'm
They
so sorry.
advertising.
Maybe I should go to
advertising.
speech therapy.
I've been there.
All right. It always looks more appetizing in the picture. That's no matter what you do, it's gonna look fake on TV. But this looks very sad for a burger. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's supposed to be a double. There's more than 2 buns on here.
Yeah.
You know, it looks weird. Do you have any thoughts on the look, Shaps?
Yeah. You know how I feel about soda? Kind of feel the same way about most fast food
I see.
restaurants.
Well,
So
I appreciate your candidness and your openness and your honest opinion.
it's for the podcast, man.
I will say McDonald's is one of my guilty pleasures.
Guilty
Really?
pleasures. I love McDonald's.
I like the
Oh, yeah,
breakfast.
I do too.
The
Let me get
breakfast
this
is-
out the way.
I love McDonald's.
Okay.
Okay, where did that love stem from, please?
My childhood.
Ah,
don't know.
now we charge her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's minus $100 on this
Right.
therapy session. Do you have any memories of getting up super early to catch McDonald's breakfast before they close down and getting your McGriddles or whatever you got, McMuffin?
Yeah, my dad used to. No, he'd let us sleep in, and he would go get the breakfast. So then, for years, probably into my like 16, maybe 17, I'd wake up and there would be McDonald's breakfast sandwich on the counter waiting for me. So
Yeah.
I guess I was spoiled.
There was a lot of times when we were kids, we had to take road trips, and in the morning, while the sun's still coming up, I'd wake up in the back seat. I'm like tiny, but yeah, believe it or not, guys, I used to be a tiny guy. And I'd wake up, the sun's coming up, it's blue outside because
Yeah.
the sun ain't out yet, and then it was like we got into that McDonald's drive-thru, and it was phenomenal.
Okay, yeah. As a kid, let me tell you, everything just bleeds excitement and joy. I mean, like with everything being like red and colorful, you know, and then like the smell and the aroma, you're like, and the play place that God you would never ever touch nowadays. My God,
It's time,
do you hate
guys.
your children? All right,
I
well,
can't-
here's the time.
I can't put it off any longer. We have to eat this.
Oh, I can
Staring
put it
at
off
you.
longer if you need
Do you,
to.
Erica? Do you already like the Big Mac?
Yeah.
Oh, she's
I
had
like
one.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
I've
she's
had
had
one.
one.
Yeah, it wasn't until my late 20s, maybe early 30s that I got one.
Wow. Okay.
All right, it's time for Shaps to give us the ruling.
I'm excited.
I get the rolling. Oh boy.
Let's do this. Ready?
3, 2, synchronize.
Everyone except Erica took a bite.
Yeah, well, I also have my Invisalign in, so I'm gonna have to take it to go. But trust me, I'm gonna eat it.
Okay.
I am tempted.
Are you not bugged by the temperature and whatnot? Are you gonna reheat it later?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, it's fine.
That's right. McDonald's is McDonald's, bro.
Yeah.
Like she
I'll-
don't care.
Find a French fry 5
Dude,
years
one-
later that hasn't decomposed in the side of my car.
That's
so.
quite disgusting.
Yeah. Y'all have never seen that? The lady ordered a meal from McDonald's and didn't preserve it, but she like put it away under like this little casing, and it like looked the same almost from
I've
the time
seen
she
that
bought
before.
it. Yeah.
Oh,
While y'all are
yeah.
eating McDonald's, I'm giving y'all like this.
Yep. No, it's great. It'll survive the apocalypse.
Oh yes.
Tell you what, nothing has ever killed my appetite.
Did you bring napkins by chance? Great. Glad we came prepared.
Look, okay, you didn't have to wait in the drive-thru for 30 minutes. to
Oh,
get
another
this.
please pull forward story,
Yeah, I
Caleb.
texted you.
Wow, really original.
I told you why I was late to get here. Was because I was sitting in that drive-thru and I finally got to the front. Like, oh yeah, we please pull forward. I'm like, I ordered the number 1. That's like their main thing, man.
They were
You
like, oh, we weren't expecting that.
Now this burger has sesame seeds on it. I didn't say give me 30 sesame seeds only. You know, just so annoying. I'm sorry. Hold on, my brother wrote in and gave us a nice healthy explanation for why they ask you to pull forward all the time for seemingly no reason. Let's read this. Okay, I know we had a guest on here named Matt, but my brother just also happens to be named Matt. He says, I'm not sure if this offers any insight, but after working for a drive-thru for 2 years, there's a reason why they ask you to pull forward.
Oh.
You ready for this?
Uh-huh.
My experience is that there is this little TV monitor above the cashier calculating the time it takes for an order to be completed. If you're completing orders quickly, the numbers on the screen recording your time should be green. If you start falling behind, the numbers will begin to turn yellow and eventually red. Once a manager notices that you've fallen behind, you'll be chewed out for a good 2 hours until you fix it. The best remedy to solve red numbers is to ask people to pull forward in order to doctor, he put that in quotes, your performance. The only other reason would be that there's a pickup order behind you and it would be faster to serve that vehicle than have them wait while they make your food, even if it's a basic item. That's my experience, at least. You know.
Some good insight. I've never worked the food industry.
I'm blessed with that, too. I've never had that issue. Where
I've never worked fast food. I have worked food before.
Oh, yeah. No, I could never.
Where'd you work food-wise, Shaps?
I worked in an assisted living facility as a cook.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Well, you said that really fast, but I still understood you. Maybe it's because we've been friends for so long. I still heard what you were trying to tell
I'm
me.
just used to saying it a lot.
Guys, we had such a great conversation today as I try to eat this without a napkin, but
Honestly, it wasn't that bad.
no. Wait, did you finish yours?
Yeah.
I've been carrying the conversation so hard. Me and Erica have.
It's lunchtime,
They just
bro.
gave you time to eat.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad we didn't dampen your appetite.
No.
Erica, thanks for coming on. This was fantastic.
Yeah, this was
It was
fun.
such a good
These
one.
fries are sad, though.
Oh, yeah, because they were good when I ordered them, and then I put them in the microwave waiting for them to, anyway.
No.
Erica, I hope we can have you on again so we could actually talk about my personal problems. And I'll pay you. I don't care. No, I've fixed most of them, and
You did, huh?
yeah, I know, right? No, I mean, like, I know what they are, and I've been trying to work on them, so it's not even like I need therapy. I mean, I know we all do, at least, in your opinion. We all need therapy.
Sounds like he's been watching TikTok.
But I want to talk about, like, what I did, and, like, I would love to know, like, did I handle stuff in a healthy way, and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of go from there at some point. I'd love to have you back on, but it was such a great discussion.
Yeah, let me know when you're ready
Absolutely.
for part 2 of
Yes,
mental health.
absolutely. So we can call this
ready.
part 1. We're pretty sure you're going to come back.
Oh, yeah, I'll come back. Like I said, I'll talk about therapy all day long. So.
Okay.
Well, guys, it was such a great episode. I'm going to finish this burger. We are filming a couple episodes back to back, so give me some time. Love you guys. Shaps, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Erica.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.